You are listening to Radio Bilingüe on WBFO FM HD3 Buffalo, powered by Sin Fronteras Western New York and presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. More information at bataviadownsgaming.com. Sin Fronteras Western New York, Buffalo's media platform for Western New York Hispanics,
producing bicultural content that informs, entertains, and inspires the forward thinking.
Sin Fronteras Western New York, delivering bilingual stories,
hot topic conversations,
and the voices from our Latino community.
Sin Fronteras Western New York,
la única producción contemporánea en español
y en inglés en la ciudad de Buffalo. Sin Fronteras Western New York,
your connection to cultural ties in Latin America
and hyperlocal news in the Western New York area.
Sin Fronteras Western New York es para ti.
All right, and welcome, bienvenidos a otro episodio de Sin Fronteras Western New York. I'm your host, Lorenzo Rodriguez, and hopefully we got some tech heads out there, or if not, hopefully we educate you on some new and emerging ways to learn and just observe the world. This is exciting for me because I am a self-proclaimed nerd, tech nerd. I saw this guest on our list and I was like, yes, this is going to be really, really cool. Hopefully you find some enjoyment in this one and some enlightenment. Today, our guest is Alex Fernandez. Alex is the founder of VR Buffalo. What is VR Buffalo? I'll get to that. But really, what we're talking about here is virtual reality. La realidad virtual. Did I get that right, Alex?
Sounds correct to me.
All right. Well, Alex, welcome to Sin Fronteras.
Un placer. Thank you so much for having me, Lorenzo.
You are Chileno.
Chileno by sangre. I was born in Barcelona, so I'm a Spaniard by birth.
So you got the real good refined Spanish. We're not gonna try. I try not to get too much into my Spanish. My mom likes to call me out on my quote unquote disparates, but I think I got realidad virtual right. That's a good start.
Yes.
So I guess, to give you an idea, to set up the table also for our listeners, you're all about making virtual reality more attainable and more accessible in an educational sense. Schools, libraries, universities, in and around the Buffalo, Western New York area, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Learning through play, learning through games. Right.
Which sometimes is the best way to do it. We talk about STEM a lot in today's education world, and I feel like this is immediately adjacent, if not already in that science, technology, engineering, and math. Took me a minute there. My CPU takes a little bit of time.
I tried to help. Yeah.
So, Alex, first off, VR Buffalo, what is its mission? I think I kind of stole your thunder there, but explain to me and our audience VR Buffalo's mission and what is the goal that you set out to do?
Yeah, it's kind of a continuation of instructional path that I fell into in 2008 when I became a teacher, and I got enamored with game-based learning and learning through play. Early on, it started with 3D modeling, 3D design, then moved into 3D printing. And then throughout that time, the evolution of commercial and consumer virtual reality really started to step into a new space. And I became enamored by it very early in 2013, and I jumped in full bore, and I've been trying to climb to the top of the mountain and scream as loud as I can and get people ready and look forward to the future careers, right? Helping prepare youth and adults for the jobs of tomorrow and the things that don't exist yet, and understanding that these transferable skills that you can acquire on the current technology will be valuable and will be helpful as you pursue, different career pathways, or if you use it for leisure, or, community, you name it. There are so many possibilities. I really just like shedding light on it. And I love that aha moment or that magic and wow moment when people are in. It'll never get old for me, putting people in that first experience and helping them connect it with some purpose. My focus is really about purpose over play. Looking at this technology, many people look at it as another gaming console, yet the history has been with NASA using it in the 80s and engineers and auto manufacturers and people using this for 30 to 40 years now, leading into where we are today. So its history, its background is a tool. And I think that's what we need to leverage and help people understand. This can be used to create portfolios, to explore and practice and learn new skills. I think as it evolves, it will become more and more valuable in industry than in higher education, and hopefully in the K through 12 space, where we really need to prepare these kids for the jobs.
And I hear the educator in you. You come from an educational background, correct?
Correct. Yes.
What grade level?
Every grade level, every subject. I was pre-K to 8, 200 kids. I was teaching the computer curriculum in charge of all the technology. And then after that, I substituted in about 30 buildings in the Buffalo Public Schools, every grade level, every subject. I just wanted to learn through experience. So.
You mentioned that aha moment, and I feel like that's something that educators now, it's harder to reach that moment of realization and in genuine enthusiasm for learning. It is what it is. I'm speaking in generalizations, but as a parent, as somebody who works outside of here in a field with youth, I feel like there's a bit of there's more barriers, there's more obstacles. Attention is just everyone's attention is being pulled in many different directions. I feel like this is something that we've known about, like you mentioned, for some time, but now the applications and the entry point for folks is a lot easier. And also just, you got to meet kids where they're at and young adults where they're at. And I think you mentioned the gaming component of it, and that's why I think the general populace assumes that VR is for, but you're out here saying, hey, there's something else to it. There's applications where, I don't know, you can go back and see the dinosaurs almost as if you were back in that era. You can see the human body and all its different layers and components. So I think what entices me to this. I remember you mentioned how it's been around for so long. I'm kind of dating and aging myself here, but I remember the movie Blank Check. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was this young kid who all of a sudden gets a blank check, decides to buy a mansion. It's $1 million, and somehow he was able to buy all these things that nowadays I think he'd get less than a fraction of that. But one of the things he had was a virtual reality simulator chair, console, desk. And I always thought that would be so neat to have that accessible to all of us. And now we have it for general consumer purchase and consumption. And how would you describe that quick change? And I don't know, for those that have never experienced it, how could you paint that picture of how easy it is and what does it look like?
Well, I think, it's one of those things is I could try to explain it till I'm blue in the face. It's an experiential medium. I think it's able to simulate and emulate, scenarios and put you into circumstances. Flight simulators, driving a motorcycle, riding a car, climbing a mountain can feel real to the point where your hands start to sweat and your knees start to shake. I think there's a lot of power in what it can do to give you a sense of presence and also to take away a lot of those distractions. Because it's so immersive, it really kind of just encompasses you. Mm-hmm. And there are ways now where you can use mixed reality where it may not take away the whole natural environment. It just places an object in front of you.
Is that what's called augmented reality or
mixed or augmented reality? Yeah, the thing, we've noticed with our phones where you hold it up and see a simulation. Like now I put on the headset and the cameras allow me to see the entire room and I can plop a ping pong table and play against somebody anywhere in the world right in my living room. While still looking at the environment and seeing the space.
And now I think the one that everyone's kind of heard of is the Meta, the Oculus Rift. Yeah. What are the other, if I'm looking into potentially getting into this world, who are the players? What are the main pieces of technology that that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for those who are PC gamers, there's a whole lot of possibility in the desktop VR. The complication with desktop VR is it's still tethered. It still uses a wire connected to a computer, oftentimes will require towers and sensors.
With GPU, graphic processors.
It used to be me with the 70-pound Pelican case, 25 minutes to set up.
You the sensors in a room.
Yeah, one station. And it was a lot of work. And now you have these headsets where I can put 8 of them in a hockey bag, roll up, and be ready in 5 minutes. It's a significant jump. Historically speaking, there are a lot of players in the game. Valve Index has a really good headset. HTC Vive is another good one for desktop. And then, like you mentioned, the Rift and the Oculus. I mean, Oculus was built and designed by a gentleman named Palmer Luckey and was valued at, I think, $2 billion in its sale in less than 2 years. And it was the fastest growing company in the history of the world.
Well, once you get Meta backing you.
So there's no other company that grew as fast as this guy who basically started an idea with duct tape, a cell phone, and some software on his face. And
I remember the Google Cardboard.
Yeah, Google Cardboard in 2013 was what came out with the design. I took that and I carved it out and I put a couple lenses in, dropped my first phone in, and made my first VR headset. And then I'm like,
it looked like a viewfinder, like the old fashioned.
Yeah, even Mattel Toymaster came out with a version of it where you could use that with the cell phone right in there. I've got that one at home. It's they're nice, but they're 3 degrees of freedom. They don't allow you to move anywhere but just turn and be stationary. And there's also no interaction. Right. I think, now where you're looking at interaction, sense of presence, collaboration, and all of these things, like that's where a lot of the real value is coming into play. For me, getting a room of 5 people in headsets in the same space, all learning about architecture and simulations and going through tutorials together and building with the same tools together can be more powerful. If you look at the design cycle and iteration in iterative design, right? I can have an artist, a 3D modeler, a texturing specialist, a coder, all in the same room in VR, working together, each working on their component. We can live test real gameplay and instantly get that feedback in and turn that into actionable fixes and bug fixes and things like that.
We talk about remote work and interconnectivity in multiple work settings.
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost putting folks in the same room hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I guess, the working implementations of it in different industries. I gotta imagine, like, I know AutoCAD is a big thing for architects and people constructing buildings. That's got to be an immediate application, right?
Yeah, architecture is one of the ones that I really love diving into because it gets into your basic 3D modeling, your civil engineering, your industrial design. Then you go into textures and everything like that. But
for the clients too, you can put them in the actual
it allows
structure.
I have an architect that's working on a rebuild of some work on my house, so I've taken a model of the existing house as is and the new model that I'm looking at built out, so I could walk through it and literally to scale and walk it through my house, and I could put my hand on shelves and it was lined up. I had it perfectly aligned with everything, and it's magic to be able to take something and you walk through its theoretical presence and do that with other people. I think there's a lot of devices that can do it. Honestly, the Meta devices are probably what I would say are some of the top of the line. There is Pico is another company, which is out of Asia, but has a US presence as well. And they have some good devices. I've recently gotten a couple of their devices for testing and demos and things like that. There are many new players who are coming back into the game. Google was in with something called Daydream, then they stepped out. They're partnering with Samsung right now to bring something else back. There are other players that have partnered with Meta and their Meta OS, which is the open source version of their Horizon OS, I think they call it.
Is that what they marketed as the metaverse?
It's their operating system. Think about it as Windows for a VR headset, but it's like Windows versus Apple, right? And the Vision Pro is the Apple, and they're like the new Microsoft.
That one, talk about price points. That one's
I can buy
1,800.
I can buy 8 of the decent. Well, I can probably buy 12 actually headsets for the price of one of those Vision Pros. So when I look at the interest of getting youth and getting accessibility and getting it out there, I'm instantly going to steer away from something that I can get 10 of these versus one of these.
That's the Apple price tag that we've come to learn and love, and I guess I don't know about love.
Their strategy is maintain quality, and I don't take anything away from that. But I think they're also jumping into a game and chasing where it's evident.
But an Oculus Rift, I assume I think the price point you mentioned was somewhere in the $300 range. That's feasible for some of us, myself included, but then for others, for lower income, disadvantaged, marginalized communities, that's lofty price point. Going back to VR Buffalo, your big push, your big mission is to get this technology in the hands of those that might not be able to afford or encounter this in their day-to-day lives. How's that journey been? And you mentioned also multiple age groups. I assume you're working not just with elementary or secondary. You're kind of working with all ages, right?
Yeah, across the spectrum for sure. It started with high school and kind of like the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which are really about career exploration and kind of taking a look at tools and seeing how they work. And then it's expanded into university programming as well. Recently had some interns that completed 130 hours with me. And in that time, we published a live game in VR, mobile and desktop. And they were able to get a 400 level course at the end of it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So they're building the VR programs almost from the ground up.
Well, they had a demo like for a desktop application. Like they had built a concept for a game in a game jam. And what we did is they took their 2D concept of a game and I said, how do we make this 3D where people are inside of the game? And we started by going through and exploring the hardware, exploring the software, and then just jumped right into building 3D models and the assets and the space and the characters. And then we were in parallel, we're building a game design document specifying all the different components of the games, what would be integrated and included. So the age demographic is really across the board. It's age 10 to 100. I mean, I've had students that are in their 70s and 80s and they're getting into this stuff because of a number of reasons. Socialization, physical movement, their grandkid loves it. I play mini golf with my father and my 7-year-old son. So I have a 7-year-old and a 70-year-old, and then myself in the middle. And we play around at mini golf in these magical places multiple times a week. And we used to do it when he was in South Carolina after dinner, 3-4 times a week, So it's a great way to connect.
Amazing.
During COVID, it was a saving grace for me. I got into an early beta called Horizon Worlds. In its early days, it was just all early adopters and like-minded individuals, and started just playing and dabbling and building. At the time, I was a teacher at the charter school here locally, teaching in engineering design. And during my time there, I would end my day and I would jump into meetings and I was building teams, and all of a sudden these projects started rolling, and ended up creating a company that lasted for about 3 years, designing interactions and games and experiences like that for quite some time. So it was not only helped me build friendships and community, but I started a company with 4 people I never met in person. They were avatars. The only existence that I knew them was avatars. And sure, we had some video chats and things like that, but to start an LLC and a business and have it survive for 3 years with people that you literally never have shared space with is, it shows the power of the remote capability.
When I have these conversations with very interesting folks, like yourself, I always think of, especially with something so meaty and different and foreign to some, I always think of my 80-some-year-old octogenarian mother. You mentioned your 70-year-old father, who was a straight-up hispanoparlante. Explícame esta cosa de realidad virtual. ¿Qué es eso?
Es una pregunta bien difícil, claramente, pero lo que te puedo decir es que la realidad virtual es una experiencia. Es una cosa bien difícil para explicar con palabras o con video. Que es una cosa que sientes, que cuando tú estás ahí y acuérdate la primera vez que tú miraste a un mágico y hizo algo enfrente de ti que no puedes entender.
Esto es brujería.
Exactamente. Y
los espejuelos, eso, ¿cómo funcionan?
Bueno, lo que tienen son 2 pantallas que te dejan ver cosas cerca o adelantado enfrente de ti, y tú puedes estar en un mundo completamente cerrado y creado en la computadora, o también una mezcla de la realidad del mundo o con cosas o objetos que son digitales puestos enfrente de ti. Y con esto se puede armar cosas, se puede comunicar, se puede jugar.
Estos no son juegos de video, nada más.
Se pueden ser juegos de video, pero también son herramientas para entrenar, como los astronautas de NASA que lo han usado ahora por más que 40 años, que para entrenar pilotos, para entrenar ingenieros, doctores haciendo cirugía. Todas estas industrias están usando esta tecnología para mejorar la manera en que lo hacen, la manera en que entrenan y que aprenden estas cosas. Y eso, la oportunidad para los niños que tienen dificultades de aprender sin actualmente, físicamente tocando cosas. Y eso es lo que cambia la manera que estás interactivo ahí, haciendo las cosas con tus manos. Es una manera de conectar tu cerebro que no funciona de la misma manera que leer palabras en un papel. Así que hay muchas personas que tienen avantajes que les ayuda bastante la habilidad de entrenar, practicar o hacer algo que disfrutan, repetido con personas con toda parte del mundo y en un sentido que están como casi en el mismo sitio, ahí en el mismo cuarto.
Alex, I appreciate you role-playing there with me, my 80-year-old mother. I think she's seen VR headsets, but again, it's this, for somebody of a different time, it's just, it's a lot to process.
Hard to picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, and then one of those things is I've been asked to explain it so many times.
Until you actually put on those headsets.
You want me to explain it to you? Here, I've got my headset. I'll explain it to you. That's gonna be
after the interview, because I'm the one that needs screen time guards, because, yeah.
Balance. It's all about purpose and play. Make sure you balance.
So you mentioned your 70-year-old father?
Yes. Yeah.
And also Chileno.
Also.
Right? Hispanoparlante.
See.
How do you bring somebody of that age group, that mindset from an analog world, how do you bring them into this? How do you softly introduce them to this? Because it has to be overwhelming. I'm overwhelmed sometimes, and I've seen tech evolve in my lifetime. How was that experience?
I mean, my dad's very spatial, and he's kind of an engineer in his background. So, for him to kind of look at it through that lens, I showed him some of the things that I was working on early on, and I got him in there, and then, his interest is, the physical movement and the socialization and the interaction were the more appealing. To others, it's content creation. To others, it's just viewing, content in different ways.
You mentioned the movement aspect. For a long time, as we mentioned, it was just sedentary, putting on the goggles, you moved your head around and that was it.
Right.
But now there are devices that you can use your hands and it picks up on the
here.
And that was a game changer, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Wii. Think about the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
The Wii first came out, right? That's one of the first iterations of physical gaming. If you want to go even further back, then Nintendo had something called the Power Pad, and it was the first time that you have kids.
You're talking my language.
Yes.
Yep.
In front of the TV.
It was a mat that had buttons, and then you would run on the mat, and that was your little figure on the very first Nintendo Entertainment System would run and sprint and
I made a replica in VR of track meet and take your hands and you grab these things and you run like this. So
I remember
nostalgia.
You mentioned Nintendo Wii, and I think that was also a revolutionary just piece of tech. Not considering the gaming component of it, just I remember
the
folks of the older generation seeing this and really gravitating to it. It was, I think, it might be incorrect. I think the Switch might have outperformed it, but the Wii was one of the highest selling consoles of all time.
I think so. And you saw aging care facilities start to implement bowling leagues.
The Wii bowling and Wii tennis.
I used it as a special needs classroom tool because I had kids who were going to the gym and they weren't participating and they just weren't doing it. They weren't physically moving. So I set it up and I had tournaments, started Olympics, and started inviting other classrooms in to play with the kids. So we had these kids that were isolated, that were non-active, that were just disconnected from everything that was going on. And I used the we as a way to bring some life into the classroom and to use it as an alternative for gym class. And it was fantastic. I would really love it.
You have to keep, as an educator, you have to keep using what's available to you to maintain the attention, to maintain the curiosity, the interest. And that's amazing. One would think, oh, it's a gaming console, but no, there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, engagement's tough, right? And I am an adult with ADHD. I have a lot of trouble learning with traditional methods. Like just giving me a textbook or video, I'm not going to learn it. I got to do it. I got to physically touch it.
And you're someone of an adult age. There's kids that are in the same boat that are now, I mean, we're seeing so many rise in numbers of kids, of university students that they're not reading. You want that to also hopefully change, but in the meantime, they got to learn. You got to use whatever tools you can. I think of stand and deliver. I need to reach these kids, and you need to use what you can to do so. So it's an amazing application for something that, as you mentioned, for a long time was a recreational piece of technology. Are you seeing success, or other than the Wii class, the Wii phys ed component? Are you seeing how does the success look like right now?
Well, I think, there's a number of after-school programs that I focus on different things. Like there's a few more special needs students. So we do just active and physical gaming on a regular basis. So they're doing mini golf, they're playing basketball, they're interacting with each other, they're playing table tennis, and they're physically moving. And then there's others where they want to learn more about engineering. So we dive right into a game development program, and I'm showing them 3D modeling, and we're coding. Saturday academies, it's a lot of times it's family. So it's about introducing them to the power of the technology and how the kids should use it as a tool, the career pathways, the free tools that are out there, and just appropriate usage too, because a lot of parents are putting younger kids in these devices and they really shouldn't under 10.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that's one of the main criticisms that I would think would come of this is, well, kids already have enough digital components in their lives. This is another thing to take their eyeballs. And I think that with every new piece of technology and mechanisms out there, you said it. You have to have some moderation. You have to have some go screen time limits.
Yeah, I find that the balance of purpose and play are the key to it. Always lead with purpose. Always have something where you're building something, you're learning something, you're doing something constructive. And then after that, you can use it for leisure, for entertainment, for exercise, for whatever it is. But once you develop those habits as a youth, you'll tend to kind of continue to approach things that way. And if you're using it for strictly entertainment, you find that it tends to take away more than it adds, right?
And for those just now listening and joining us, I'm speaking with Alex Fernandez. He's the founder, the president. You're it for VR Buffalo,
correct,
here in Western New York, bringing the technology of tomorrow to, I guess, the students of today, making it accessible. And Alex, as far as all the different stakeholders, I guess, what role are you seeing the parents play? You mentioned a little bit of being judicious with the amount of screen time, but besides that, what role do you see parents, educators play in this VR learning experience?
Yeah, I think it's just really making sure that students and just general users of this understand the value as a tool as much as they see the value as a toy, right? It is a toy. It's an entertainment device. It's a simulator. It's fantastic. It entertains me all the time, but it also can help a kid find a career. It can take these transferable skills that they think are meaningless and give them purpose. I hired a 14-year-old kid for $50 an hour a couple of months back because he was talented. He had built Minecraft worlds. He knew how to code. He had a Roblox portfolio. He was like a professional. And yeah, we had to get working papers, got his parents on board, and we're able to bring him on and get him like $2,600 for his contribution.
It's rethinking the traditional means of business, of work, of learning, right? Are you seeing a lot of apprehension from from not so much educators, or maybe educators and parents? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. Like the companies that are backing the major advancements in this are also backed by social media and other, other variables there that are just not appealing. So it makes it hard to adopt. It makes it hard to implement. And you face a lot of this struggle to see it as a toy. Just it's another Xbox in the house. It's another distraction. But, you now have esports programs, and you have engineering programs, and you have nursing programs, and you have, doctors that are studying, and all of that's happening in university, and all of them are using VR headsets in some way, shape, or form, right? These programs are all integrated. It's usually in little pockets, and then it ends up being something where like college is like, okay, this is getting critical mass. We need to go ahead and centralize it. Let's build a VR lab, and let's start to make sure that we implement this with purpose. I'm hopefully in talks with Villa to maybe be able to do something like that and get a little bit more implementation with purpose, and I want to take away the lift of trying to learn something that is foreign to them, and just come in and provide all the technology for them to evaluate all the different hardware profiles and figure out what you want. Now let's look at all the software. What do you need? Where does it fit? How do we target it with purpose, and build curriculums that integrate, that add value, and that are not going to be just, for use of play and end up in a closet somewhere. Like 3D printers or something that were given to thousands of schools, and thousands of those schools have them collecting dust in a corner somewhere because nobody's a champion of it. There's no teacher out there that needs to become a VR expert. Teachers need to keep teaching and focus on everything else. That's why organizations like myself help them be able to do this exploration more thoroughly, help understand how to integrate this with purpose, and figure out ways to strategically align it with curriculum and with standards, and say that, yes, this is adding value, and it's preparing them not just for university and the implementations of the same technology, but also industry. And here are industry standard tools that they're getting hands-on experience with. So, the power of that is that they're getting a heads up. They're getting early access to a lot of tools. Some of them are completely free, and they're in development, and you can go ahead and you can tinker, and you can learn, and you can create, and there's no limit to it. But it's got to be the intent of the parents and the educators to say, hey, there's some value here. There's some purpose here. Let's talk about that. Let's highlight it in some way.
I think, looking back on my own personal experience, for me, one of the wildest realizations was when I went into middle school, and all of a sudden they had smart boards. And smart boards were basically a projector with a touchable screen that then you can control the mouse on your computer. They were attached to a computer, and you could pull up all sorts of things, but notebooks, what you name it. It's basically a tablet before there was a tablet. And I remember folks being like, oh, well, this is a really nice toy. No, that I remember a professor, a high school teacher doing, and this is how you're talking about how to use things to reach kids. We had a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire PowerPoint competition on the smart board or almost like a Jeopardy kind of board.
Yeah.
But it's teachers now thinking along the lines of, this is a new sandbox to play in, to also, it's like you mentioned, learning through play. I think that at the end of the day, that's something that we need to really come to grips with. That's a way to end up making real significant strides in education, for all the reasons we mentioned before that are harder and harder for children nowadays. And we are Sin Fronteras Western New York. We talk about topics, and we speak to the Hispanic community. So Latino communities, Latino families in Buffalo and throughout the United States, it's got to be not only just its cost, it's the infrastructure, it's digital literacy, it's the language barrier. How are you helping to break those or overcome those obstacles? Primarily, I think the digital literacy and language barriers.
Yeah, I think awareness is the biggest variable, making sure that this is seen as something that can benefit the kid if they're going to get it, and to start right off the bat to highlight that purpose over play. I think there is an opportunity for them to learn skills that are relevant in industry, to practice relevant skills that are, a part of their current curriculum, and also an opportunity to make social connections. But that doesn't mean this shouldn't be monitored. And parents also need to be aware of the potential risk to younger children with eyes still developing. Extended use of the headsets with artificial depth can actually cause ocular myopia. And what will occur is they'll be getting a football-shaped astigmatism occurring on the pupil because it's still in development. They shouldn't be on screens for long, long periods of time. And that can potentially affect their depth perception for the remainder of their life.
Right.
So, I don't know how deep the studies go because they haven't had youth with access to these things, but more and more you got an older sibling and there's a 5-year-old who spent 3 hours on the thing in the corner. And the parents were telling me about this, and I helped inform them that it's really important. Like, I have a 7-year-old. I let him use it, but it's very limited use. It's only when I'm there. And any kid who's between 10 and 13 should be monitored when they're on this. I mean, these are social platforms, like the same type of, stuff that you see happening in Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite, and the inappropriateness that occurs in those spaces will also occur in these other social spaces. So there's a layer of understanding there that this is kind of an adult space, right? It's an adult tool. It's now being made a toy and a gaming console, and it's creating this new ecosystem because that's what's driving the innovation. These are the people who really want to see it move forward.
It's unfortunate because we as humans, sometimes we get these wonderful new tools and services and mechanisms. The internet was one that I remember at the advent of it was a wild and wonderful new frontier. And I would say now that it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, and I'd say it's more almost detrimental than positive, unfortunately. So I'm glad you broached this topic, because as I'm putting on my parent hat now, and yeah, I would worry about the addiction to it. I worry about I didn't even know about the, what was it? The
Ocular myopia.
Ocular myopia. That sounds awful. And I in my mind, I want to provide my children the opportunity to be introduced to these new and exciting means of just experiencing things. But yeah, it's moderation. And I don't know I guess if you were speaking to a parent, what's the health? I mean, I think it goes through ages and the child themselves, but what's a safe, healthy amount of exposure? And also as a parent, how can you got a headset strapped on. I can't see what you're seeing, right?
I mean, there are applications where they can. There are see-through. There are ones that are open on the side, so you have visibility. I mean, to each their own when it comes to the use of these things. I have people who I know who spend 10 hours a day on these things.
Oh, wow.
And that's just a big part of their social life and their work life. Like, they're developing, they're building, they're creating, they're testing, and then when they're hanging out with their friends in the same space. So that's just a part of who they are. I think, as much as it's scary and it can cause harm, it can also be used for positive. Just like I said, it can cause eye issues. There are opticians that are using virtual reality as a method to repair similar eye conditions and help reverse the effects of things like that. So, it's about appropriate usage. It's about being aware. It's about, understanding, and I think like any technology, it's about moderation. We're all going to become consumed by media and consumed by tech, and it's just going to constantly be growing around us. So we have to be our own kind of.
I got to imagine there's also, much like phones now, there's a cap that you can put on viewing time or screen time, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't implemented the parental controls yet because my son doesn't have his own headset. I know that there are parental controls in some of the ecosystems. Pico does not, because they're more enterprise focused.
You have multiple profiles on headsets?
I have 3 profiles on some of my headsets, so I cycle through, but then you have to buy the software for each of them if you're trying to cross-play and things of that nature.
And I guess and sorry, I play devil's advocate because I feel like we gotta look at it in multiple dimensions for a bad pun there. But let's talk about like the real applications that we've already done so, but I guess when it comes to culture, Latino culture and history, how could VR be used to I guess preserve our culture per se?
I mean, there's some really cool immersive learning platforms that are available. I've met a lot of people in Hispanic and Latino communities that have built worlds and games and experiences that are representative of their culture, which have been fantastic ways for people to express themselves, to share, to create a congregation space, comedy clubs, you name it, right? So all this stuff is occurring, in those spaces. But I think, as a community, like understanding that these can be helpful to the youth and just not immediately turning away and saying that this is a distraction, it's a toy, and it's only going to bring negativity, right? And I think, though it might take away from what people consider traditional, childhood interactions, if this becomes their career, if this becomes what they do, is it a waste of time? I'm a 45-year-old adult who's been told for 30 years to stop playing so much, stop buying so many toys, stop wasting my time with games. And for the past 3-4 years of my life, I've focused on virtual reality, game development, game advertising, advergaming, all of these different, integrations. And now it's learning through play and learning experiences and integrated immersive interactions that help learning in all different settings. It doesn't matter what grade level, it doesn't matter what subject area. There's typically a way that I can complement it, and it's not meant to replace. It's not meant to be the only way. It's not meant to do everything. It should be an asset that basically just enhances, helps with engagement, helps with retention, helps hook those kids that are typically behavior issues or problems or lack of focus, because it takes the phone and everything else out of the room, out of the equation. You'd be amazed the type of success that I have with the kids who most teachers are struggling with. And that's where I technically have the best results. And this is the way I approach a district. If I'm getting the opportunity to talk to admin or district level staff, I'm talking to them about, where's your worst subject? Mm-hmm. Show me the lowest engagement. Show me the worst scores. Let me support those teachers. And that's where you can see the change in the attitude and the interest, and then they start getting involved, and the projects get, they come to life. And it's,
I gotta assume arts are a big one, because unfortunately arts tend to be on the chopping block a lot of times in school.
Digital design, and I did a lot of work as a teaching artist, but unfortunately that funding is just little by little, just dissipating everywhere. And then STEM is also in the same boat. Even the after school programs, I lost 6 or 7 schools this year that lost all their after school funding. So it's pretty significant, when you look at these types of things. But the arts are necessary. The creative element is necessary. I'm an advocate for STEAM instead of just STEM, because arts integration is one of the most important. I have a background in sculpture and an artist, at the core. But one of the things that you have to think about is that scientific innovation and discovery and the evolution of technology would never have happened if somebody didn't come up with that idea.
Somebody needed imagination.
Yeah, somebody had to be creative before it was really solidified and tested or, manufactured, whatever it might be. So that artist inside of the engineers and the scientists is the key to forward progress. Yet it's looked at as just this, superfluous thing where people can kind of escape and.
It's why I've always been enamored by and love science fiction, because, talk about the marriage of science and creativity and imagination. Sure. You need, and a lot of times you hear scientists, engineers say, oh, I thought about this because I watched Star Trek, and that got me thinking about applications I didn't think about before for tech, or just it gets your brain thinking in different ways than before. And I know I kind of, like I said, looked at the detrimental side of this world, but also I'm a huge proponent of this because I learned a great deal. Once again, aging myself, off Encarta 95, the old CD-ROM. My first PC computer that my Cuban mother bought us in the household, and an old Hewlett-Packard when it was Hewlett-Packard.
I had a Commodore 64.
Well, now you're dating yourself, Alex. As far as you mentioned partnerships and collaborations, I'm putting on my other my virtual hat of I'm a school administrator, I'm a principal. How does that conversation begin? Have you had those conversations and partnerships already formed? How's that?
I'm looking to talk to more who are willing to listen. I'm happy to do demonstrations and go out and show people what it is because a lot of times they just don't understand what it is, what its value is, how does it fit, where does it really help our community? And I think some of that requires the willingness to see, to listen, and to pilot and experiment. And a lot of what I do is kind of giving schools the opportunity to see where it helps. And the community partnerships I have now with Best Self and Say Yes are for Saturday academies and after school programs. So I do a lot of those. But I'm working to get into the school systems during the day and I'm doing a mentor program with the CTE division in 2 schools coming up in a few months. I have the Family Resource Center. We're going to be piloting some programs. I'm building awareness and hands-on demos for parents and families in the community, starting at Lafayette, and then I believe at East High School after that. And then my partnerships with the universities, Villa Maria with the internships, and I'm hoping to help support them and some of their experiments and expansion of the use of the technology here over the next year or so. So my intent is to get with more community organizations, to get into more school systems, to be able to support teachers with their integration or support enrichment programs that are looking for interesting and engaging ways to get kids excited about it.
Well, I mean, it seems like you've already been very busy. You're hoping, and I hope for all our sake that you keep building these partnerships. Hopefully, some new ones are listening, and that new bridges are built.
Fantastic.
Virtual bridges, erected from nothing, and coding. STEM. You mentioned STEM or STEAM. I like that a whole lot more. But Latino representation in those careers still somewhat low from what I've seen, what I've read. How is VR Buffalo hopefully inspiring those students to pursue those careers?
Well, 2 things. I think it's early access, early visibility to the tech, before they go out and purchase it on their own or see it, and then understanding perspective and the importance of looking at these things as an opportunity, and that their skills, their interests don't have to be just a hobby. It can be something they pursue as a profession. It can be a part of their career. They can enjoy what they do. They're allowed to. And I think a lot of people just need to find that thing that will, fill the void and give them a check and help them get to the next stages of maturity and adulthood. And I've never grown up, I guess, because I'm always looking for that thing that doesn't feel like work. And for me, it's been the fortune of shedding that light on, these kids who see their skills maybe not as valuable, like all the Minecraft worlds that they've built and all the things that they've done, with coding and Scratch or whatever it might be.
Well, the gaming industry is so lucrative now. Yeah. So you can't tell a parent that that working in or being a lover of gaming and video games could not potentially pay off in the end, because you have Full Sail, I think, has a whole
entire program
devoted to that, and more institutions and
Villa's got a fantastic game development program. Villa Maria.
Really?
Yeah. They're right here, the private college.
Right in our backyard.
Yes. Yeah. They're really, really talented.
They're doing some really cool stuff. We had one of the folks working on this program at one point was a student at Villa Maria, and they would tell me the same thing. There's so many cool and exciting things going out there.
2 out of my 3 interns were actually Latinos. So. Yeah,
there we go. So we'd have representation in the
doing my best
in the virtual reality space. That's awesome. And Alex, as far as the future, we're talking about something that a long time ago seemed very futuristic. What's the future moving forward, in your opinion? What can we expect in this space moving forward?
I mean, you all hear about the buzzword AI and this new technology.
Another tech we didn't even talk about that evil or good. I don't know. We don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's another tool, right? That's been around for a long time. It's 30, 40-year-old tech that's been evolving, and it finds its way to be helpful, and it finds its way to be destructive, just as most technologies do. It's not necessarily the tool. It's the intent and the way that it's used. So The evolution, where does that go? It's more features, more automation, and it's less invasive, right? The form factor is going to get smaller, lighter.
Yeah, after a while that gets very...
It's going to be a visor at one point that you can turn opaque or you can see through.
I think Meta has those Ray-Bans now. That's more augmented reality, but still kind of...
Yeah, I don't think they display anything on there. I think they're just cameras.
Is there some already that are kind of...
Meta has something called Orion, which is a project in prototype development that they released at their last Meta Connect conference, and it's a full holographic display in a pair of glasses.
Wow!
And there are other companies who have done it, but they're at a $4,000 or $5,000 price point, right? So it's not consumer, ready.
Yeah, you see the stuff at CES, and that always, as a tech head, that's always really exciting. And
I've been to a few of those. They're overwhelming.
I'm jealous, Alex. And half of those things don't even make it to market, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just continuous experimentation, and I think that's also something that people can get excited about. Is just the process of research and development. And look at the universities and all of the studies and all of the research that they're doing on not only the implementation of the hardware, but the hardware itself and the silicon chips and the displays and all that stuff. You have Meadows dumping billions of dollars into it and other companies who are doing it as well. But I think, I have to think that there's going to be more and more purpose that comes out of these devices, with universities thinking about how does it, apply as a tool, as a resource. And just it's not going to ever hit the entire population. There's always going to be your technophobes, your tech-averse, your people who just don't want the new thing.
Until it's Ready Player One, which is a great...
Some farmers are going to be farmers forever, man. It's.
Do you think that there? I mean, now we're going into the philosophical realm. But do you think there'll be a pushback to the analog world, or are we on this trajectory for
society? Will always have a split, and you're going to have people that live off grid. There's people who find a way, and it's still possible. It's just a choice, and I think the choice to consume what's around us is becoming harder to just ignore and turn away from, because it's so abundant. There's so much in front of us.
And you mentioned, I guess, for me, it's a bit of a boogeyman. The AI revolution that we're currently kind of seeing the beginnings of. Have they implemented any artificial intelligence into the virtual reality world? Really?
Oh.
How does that look?
Building and design tools with, assistive AI creation. You have 3D model creator tools, skybox creator tools. You have the integration of NPCs, non-player characters, which have AI integrated, tied right into them. So you can ask them questions and ChatGPT pulls in the back end and spits it out. There are AI teachers. There's an app that I'm experimenting with right now.
Talk about, I mean, it's exciting, but also slippery slope.
Yeah. It gives people an opportunity to self-investigate and self-discover, but you have less control over these things. At a certain point, it becomes, its own entity and its own animal. So I think where, just like any other tool, where implemented properly, will add value. I think it's going to create some chaos and some confusion. I think it's going to change the iterative cycle for a lot of people who are creative, because everything's not necessarily being taken over, but it's being shortened, and they'll be offered more options. Instead of coming up with 3 options in a few hours, you can have 20 of them in front of you now. And then, is it, choice paralysis that happens at that point, So is it a bonus?
That's one I'm always susceptible to, but I've used it. I've used ChatGPT. I've used some of the other models, but I think it's, once again, kind of what you've touched on in various different ways. It's knowing the limitations, the abilities, the positives, the potential of these pieces of technology, and respectfully and properly using them. I think that's the one big, caveat or the one big takeaway that I think we should all get here, is that we have these wonderful tools. We've had these phones now, these computers in our pockets. How are we using that to our betterment as an individual and society's role? So, I for one applaud you to provide these opportunities to youth, to older students. I love that you still label those your father a student, the older generation students, because I mean we all keep learning. Hopefully that's the intent. We keep learning something each day, and hopefully we'll learn in a different way through this kind of technology and others. And Alex, if folks want to know more about what you're doing, if they want to get in touch with you, if they're curious, and how can they get in contact with VR Buffalo?
Easiest way, email is on my website, which is vrbuffalo.org. My email is just alex@vrbuffalo.org. You can reach out to me and coordinate through that method, or LinkedIn has probably the most substance with respect to seeing the history of the work that I've done, the type of partnerships I have. I'm constantly putting examples up there, and it's probably the one place I'll be most responsive would be LinkedIn. So please look for me, Alex Fernandez, on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to go ahead and start a dialogue discussion and see, if we can set up an opportunity to get a hands-on demo. So,
that's parents, that's guardians, that's educators, that's
summer programs coming up. I'm looking to go ahead. I've got one already booked for an entire week, but I'm looking to go ahead and integrate into multiple summer programs. I've got talks to YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs, a couple of other, centers and things like that. But I'm willing to do workshops or esports or any type of orientation and things like that with groups. So I've had some community members with, families bring me in for, hands-on workshops in game development where you're working with the families to build their own video games. And the families all working together. So you got the dad, cool. 2 or 3 kids, and they're all collaborating.
The dad who probably played on that original power pad for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
I've heard.
Eyes lit up when I said the power pad. Like, I know you have vivid memories of that thing.
I mean, the power pad, Rob. Remember Rob, the little robot for NES? Yep. That. And then you think about old, new, revolutionary tech at the time. The light gun, the duck hunt light gun.
That worked.
Oh, it was. It would read the flashes, right?
It had one little frame in there, and it would basically put a white spot on there when you hit it, and that's how it would know if you hit it or not.
And then the very clever kids who learned that you could just put the gun up to the screen and cheat your way to success. Yeah. Not me. I was traditionalist.
Loopholes.
Some levels I'd eventually do that. Alex, this has been very enlightening. This has been a very just a very positive conversation. I think that a lot of families, a lot of educators, a lot of just citizens of the world are having and need to have. And sure. I applaud you for at least bringing that to the forefront to some that unfortunately might not have the means to get there in the first place. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on Sin Fronteras.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here. Appreciate all the work that you guys do, and look forward to working with more Buffalo schools and families, and continue to do the work that I do, so I can pass that on to the next generation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, folks, listening. You've been listening to Sin Fronteras Western New York on Radio Bilingüe 88.7 HD3 Buffalo. My name is Lorenzo Rodriguez. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you join us next week once again. Have a great one. Catch you in the metaverse.